Well, you all did a great job going into the bonus section of the STEAM Race to Space Reading Challenge, and I'm so proud of all of you. And thank you so much for joining us this morning to meet this amazing man, Dr. George Nield. But before we get to meet this amazing man, I have the privilege of introducing Chantel Bayer, who is a member of the board of the nonprofit that runs the Reading Challenge. And today, Chantel has just come back in the last couple of days from participating in the launch out of, I think, was it out of Florida? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Or
think.
was yeah, Florida.
Yeah.
And
Van Horn, Texas.
oh, it was in Texas.
Oh,
Chantel is an amazing woman. Her company is called the number 4 Space. And she has done amazing things like putting sculptures on the moon and meeting so many incredible people. And one of them was the introduction that she provided for Dr. George Nield. So I'm going to turn it over to Chantel to introduce you all to this amazing man. And we are really excited to have this opportunity. Thank you so much. Chantel.
Good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this exciting moment as we celebrate the incredible achievements of all of the prize winners here at the STEAM Race to Space Reading Challenge. You have shown extraordinary curiosity and dedication in exploring the vast universe through your reading. And today we have a truly special guest who has also explored the final frontier firsthand. We are honored to have with us astronaut George Nield, a man whose work has literally taken him to the stars. George has had a remarkable career in space exploration, including serving as the Associate Administrator for the FAA Office of Commercial Space Transportation. He has played a pivotal role in shaping the future of space travel and has spent years making important contributions to both government and private space efforts. His experiences and insights will inspire you to continue your journey of discovery. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to astronaut George Nield.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you for being bonus winners of the STEAM Race to Space Reading Challenge. That is fantastic. Reading is so awesome. It's going to help you become a lifelong learner to make great contributions in whatever way you choose to do so, and in continuing to enjoy life as you go through that journey. So let me just say that when I was growing up, I really used to like airplanes and space. And this was right at the beginning of the space program. And so we were hearing about rocket launches and satellites going into space. And the astronauts were being selected and training for their journeys to space. And I thought that was amazing. I just thought it would be incredible if someday I could go to space. But in the meantime, in school, I studied math and science, and when I could, I got my pilot's license, and then I went to college at the Air Force Academy in Colorado because I thought that would be a great way to combine airplanes and space and engineering and be a challenge and still give back to our country. And then in the Air Force, I had lots of very interesting and exciting jobs, including being a flight test engineer, riding in the back of jet fighters and trainers. And then I worked for NASA on the space shuttle program, and then the FAA and the Commercial Space Office, as Chantel mentioned. And all of those jobs were really interesting and challenging and exciting. I enjoyed them so much. But after I retired a few years ago, I actually had the chance to be on the 4th human flight of Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket and go to space. And that was just amazing. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So I've got a whole bunch of pictures to share with you, and then we'll have plenty of time to answer some of your questions. So let me just share my screen here. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Looks
okay,
great.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the people that I went to space with from all over the country. Marty Allen was a turnaround businessman specialist from California. Sharon Hagel leads this group called Kids Space Global, and it's to try to interest young people, especially girls, in space and science things. Her husband was also on the flight, Mark. He's a real estate developer. Jim Kitchen was a professor at the University of North Carolina, and he was also somewhat of a world traveler. He's actually been to 193 countries to visit. And Jerry Lai was an aerospace engineer who worked for Blue Origin and helped to design the rocket that we ended up flying on. A couple of other important.
Oh, George, I think you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So Sarah Knights was crew member 7. She didn't fly on the flight with us, but she was responsible for all of our training. And she was the last person we saw before launch and the first person we saw after landing. And then Kevin Sprague was the Capcom, that stands for Capsule Communicator. He was the person in mission control that was talking to us on the radio during the flight. Okay. So 5 days before our scheduled launch, we were asked to fly into El Paso, Texas, and we stayed in a hotel there. And then when we got up the next morning and looked outside, there were all of these Rivian electric trucks outside that said Blue Origin and had the Blue Origin feather on the side. And that's the vehicles that they used to take us out to the launch site and transport us all around the complex during our training. And it's really out in the boonies. A lot of the scenery looks like this. There were mountains and desert and cactus growing all over the place. Not a lot of people, not a lot of cities, not a lot of stores or anything. But that's actually a pretty good place if you're trying to launch rockets, just so that everyone can be safe. The nearest town to the launch site is called Van Horn. That was about a 2-hour drive out there. And it's a sleepy little town, but they must have some very good artists because they had this giant mural on the side that showed Jeff Bezos on the right there. He's the person, he founded Amazon, but he also founded a space company, Blue Origin. And he and his brother Mark are shown in this mural. They actually flew on the first human flight of the New Shepard rocket just to prove to people that, yes, it was going to be safe for other people to fly. Then we got back in the car, another 20 minutes or so, we got out to the launch site. And this is really big. It's about 250 square miles with not a lot around there. Most of our time was spent in the astronaut village, which doesn't look very much like the Kennedy Space Center, does it?
No.
They on purpose decided to make it very relaxed and informal and sort of like a ranch. And so that's where we spent a lot of our time. They had several buildings. This one was called the Kármán line. Now, I don't know if you've heard in science, the Kármán line is the name for how high you have to get to actually reach space. And most people think that that's about 100 kilometers or 62 miles above the Earth. But in this case, it's just the name of that building. They had a fitness center there and some tables and chairs, and you could just sit around and have a snack at the end of the day and talk about what was happening. Then right across, there was the Rock House. That's where we got most of our meals. They had some really good food for us. They treated us really well. And we actually lived in these Airstream trailers that were around the circle there. Each of us was able to have one special person or wife or husband or best friend or whatever stay with them, and they had everything you could ask for in those instead of being in a hotel or something that would sort of spoil the mood. And they were named after the original Mercury astronauts, or a group called the Mercury 13, which were some women that went through all the testing and medical exams and all for the early astronauts, but they didn't get to fly until one of them did many years later. So my wife and I stayed in this one called Gordo. That was named after Gordon Cooper, who was one of the Mercury astronauts. So after we got there, we dropped off our suitcases, and then that's my wife Kelly, and we walked across the way there and got to meet the rest of our crew. We had never met before. We had a couple Zoom calls ahead of that, but this was the first time we got to see each other in person, the other crew members, and then our trainer, Sarah, and our Capcom, Kevin. After lunch then, one of the first things we did was we each got a little blue bag that we could carry 3 pounds worth of souvenirs or pictures or mementos or things that we wanted to take with us on the flight. So after thinking about that, I carried some banners for the colleges that I went to, the Air Force Academy in Colorado and Stanford University in California. I had some patches that I had gotten from my previous jobs working for NASA and the Air Force. Had 5 little Lego astronauts to give to my grandkids. And have any of you read Curious George stories?
Yeah.
I really like those. This was written back in 1956, before any astronauts or monkeys had ever been to space. But I used to enjoy reading it to my daughters when they were little, and more recently to our 5 grandkids. And so I thought, I think I'll bring that book with me just to be special. The astronaut village also had this very nice fire pit area where you could, at the end of the day, sit down and look at the scenery, see the mountains in the distance. And there's some beautiful sunrises and sunsets in that part of western Texas. Just gorgeous, very clear skies. Then the next day, we got up and were driven over to the astronaut training center. And so the astronaut village is sort of like a ranch. This is more like a typical government or aerospace company facility. And inside, there's tables and chairs and pictures on the wall and diagrams. And you can see this big mock-up in the back there. That's the simulator, the training capsule that we used to spend a lot of time in practicing over and over again what was going to happen during the flight. And different companies now have different ideas on how to do that. Blue Origin decided they wanted to make their system completely autonomous. So that means there was no pilot on board steering the rocket. There was nobody on the ground with the controls looking up at the sky or monitoring instruments. It was the computer that was in charge of everything. And so what that meant was it could really shorten and streamline all the training for the people that were going to fly, because we didn't have to spend months or years practicing flying the rocket. The computers would do that. We could just learn how to talk on the radio, understand our displays, and then practice emergency procedures over and over again. So that's what we did. And part of that is getting in and out of the capsule safely, both for 1G on the ground and what would happen in emergencies, and strapping in your seatbelts or getting out of your seatbelts in weightlessness. So here's a crew of us inside that mock-up, and inside the trainer. There were actually 12 different cameras all around, because they took lots of pictures and videos during the flight for us to remember it by. And you see that little cylinder in the middle that we're holding on to? That's actually the escape rocket.
Mm.
So if we were sitting on the launch pad and something was going to be a problem and they were afraid of a fire or an explosion of the rocket, the computer could fire that escape rocket and the capsule would blast away and separate from the booster, and then we come down under a parachute. So fortunately, that didn't happen during our flight, but it felt good knowing just in case something dangerous happens, then we could have gotten away. We got our special flight suits for the flight, like I'm wearing today, and then had our official crew photo. And then we spent a lot of time in the classroom, and Sarah was going over, okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's what you need to know about the rocket. Got the booster part and the capsule. And here's how long it's going to take. Here's how to understand the displays and all the signals and what to do in case of emergencies. So here's what it looks like inside the mock-up. So there were 6 of us that flew on the flight, and there's 6 seats, and each one of the seats has a window. And it's a very nice reclined padded seat, very comfortable. You see a fancy seat belt and shoulder harness there. And then that little black box in front of us has a display, and it tells you how long it's been since launch, so you can keep track of the time, how high you are, and how fast you're going, and what are the next important things that are going to happen in the flight. And then you can see that black box right above my head. That's for the emergency oxygen masks. So it's similar to what you have in an airliner, but it's a little fancier version, and it fits a lot better on your face. And so that's what we would have used if we needed extra oxygen. Also, you see the little blue earplugs in my ears? Blue Origin did something I thought was really clever. They had recorded all the noises and sounds on a previous flight that didn't have people on it. And then they played that back when we were practicing in the simulator. And that really was helpful because there's all kinds of noise, roars and rumbles and bangs and everything. And if you had heard that for the first time during the flight, it would be like, what was that? Is everything okay? Oh my goodness. But we were used to it. This is what it's going to sound like. That's normal. Everything's fine. But it was pretty loud, so that's why we had the earplugs in. We also spent some time drawing pictures. Blue Origin has a group called Club for the Future, and it's designed to interest young people in space. And if you take a postcard and either write a paragraph or draw a picture about what you think our future in space is going to look like, and you send it to them, they will fly it on one of their space flights, and then they'll mail it back to you after stamping it flown in space. So that's pretty cool. So they asked us to do one of those postcards too for their collection. Then we had to come up with a name for our crew. Now, Roaring Twenties usually refers to the 1920s in the United States when some pretty wild things were happening, but we decided to call ourselves the Roaring Twenties because we were the 20th flight of the New Shepard rocket, and we thought we were going to make a lot of noise at launch, so we decided to call ourselves the Roaring Twenties crew. We got a chance to visit Mission Control, and that person in the black shirt there is Nicholas Patrick. He was a NASA astronaut and flew on the space shuttle, but for our flight, he was the flight director, so he was in charge of all the work getting the rocket ready for the flight and overseeing what was happening in Mission Control. Then we went out to this hangar called the Barn, and we got to see our rocket and the capsule, but notice that it's lying down. Now it's horizontal. That makes it easier to work on before the flight. So we got to see that up close. They actually roll that out to the launch pad about 8 hours before the scheduled launch, and then they raise it up to vertical. And we went out to the launch pad itself, but this was before the rocket was there. We just wanted to see what that would be like. And then came launch day. So we got up real early. It was still dark outside. Got dressed, got a little bit something to eat, and then we got to meet with our families to give them big hugs and have them wish us the best of luck and all. And that was really nice right before our flight to be able to do that. Then we hopped in these Rivian trucks and they drove us back to the astronaut training center and went back inside for one more time to let Sarah review. Okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's the emergency procedures. Make sure everybody's ready to go. And then Bob Smith, who was the president of Blue Origin, came by to assure us, don't worry, I've been really focusing on making this flight as safe as we can make it, and to wish us Godspeed and a good flight. So that was really special. And then 45 minutes before launch, we drove out to the pad and got to stand and look up and see the rocket fully fueled at this point. And that's when it all became real. Oh my goodness, we're going to fly in that to space. The rocket is 70 feet tall. And it was a beautiful day, as you can see. So here's another view. They had lots of little drones flying around to take pictures. You can see the two towers, and you see that little flame coming off the top there. The fuels that they use are liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, which are great rocket fuels, but hydrogen can be a problem if there's any sparks around. So to make sure that there's not extra hydrogen just around the rocket before the launch took place, they have it pumped up out of this tower and burn off the extra so that it won't be a danger for us. Now, here's from the other side. We had to climb up 7 flights of stairs to get up to the top, and you'll see that little white room or shelter at the very top. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, normally 7 flights of stairs, I'd be huffing and puffing it, but I think the adrenaline had started to kick in because I didn't even have to stop to catch my breath. It was just so exciting to think about going to space. So here we are inside that shelter, and this is where we would go if there was an emergency before launch while the ground crews had already gotten away from the rocket. So if there had been a fire or some concern that there might be an explosion, we would get out of the capsule and walk across the crosswalk, get in this room, close the door. There's a radio in there. There's extra oxygen in there. There's a first aid kit in there. And what we were told was, even if the rocket exploded on the pad, if we were in that room, we would be fine. So we got to see that and review procedures there. And then we lined up and walked across the walking area to get to the rocket. You can see that we walked underneath this archway that says, "Light this candle." That's what the first American to go to space, Alan Shepard, said right before his flight. He was sitting in the rocket and the engineers were saying, "Oh, we better double check this. Wait a minute, let's not go yet. I want to look at this again." And he was getting very impatient. He said, "Let's light this candle so I can go to space." So again, the new Shepard rocket is named after Alan Shepard, and so they put his words there. You also see a little silver bell on the right there. Blue Origin has this very nice tradition they started, which is everyone that goes to space on their rocket, when you go across that walkway, you ring the bell to announce, "Yep, we're on our way to space." So we lined up, walked across there. You can see the access platform connecting to the capsule. We lined up, and Sarah was talking on the radio to mission control to make sure everything was going smoothly, and it was. So then one by one, we walked over to the hatch and the capsule, turned around for one last picture, and then climbed in. Here's Sharon getting in, and you see the words on top of the hatch there, RSS First Step. That stands for Reusable Spaceship First Step. And that's talking about Jeff Bezos, who founded the company. His goal, his long-term vision is that someday we'll see millions of people living and working in space to benefit the Earth. That's going to take a long time. It's going to be really hard. But the first step to do that is to prove that we can safely and reliably take people back and forth to space. So that's what the New Shepard program is all about, taking that first step towards having lots of people living and working in space. So went in, here's Gary in seat number 1, and you can see how big those windows are. 6 people, 6 window seats, and a great view. I was in seat number 2 right behind him, and you can see Sarah. She went around to all of us to make sure we were all strapped in nice and tight and to make sure everybody was good to go. Okay, thumbs up. Yep, everybody's ready. And then Sarah left the capsule, closed the hatch. They brought the access platform back, and Sarah went down all those 7 flights of stairs, hopped in the truck, and drove about 2 miles away. So if somebody were to experience a problem on the rocket there, then at least the ground crew would be safe. So we were all by ourselves there on top of this rocket, fully fueled, ready to go. They armed the escape system. So again, if something bad had happened, even while we're sitting on the pad, we could have blasted away from the rocket, but that did not happen. So they had the final go, no-go poll at T-minus 10 minutes. Everything looked good. Then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition! And there was this bright orange flame, and you could see the reflection of it even on the white ceiling of our capsule. And the rocket engines came up to speed, and then we were going to space. And we got pushed back on our seats at about 3.5 Gs. So that means it was hard to lift your arms off your armrests, but you were going faster and faster and higher. After about a minute, we got to max Q. That's the maximum dynamic pressure. That's the greatest force that the rocket experienced. And then a little more than 2 minutes after launch, MECO, that's main engine cutoff. And a few seconds after that, bang, the capsule separates from the booster. And then mission control says, all right, you can unbuckle your seatbelts now and float around. So that's what we did. And weightlessness, just, you cannot help but smiling. It's just such an amazing feeling. Everybody's laughing and shouting and got together for a quick picture around the escape rocket there.
He's doing such a
Gary's upside down. And remember, Jim Kitchen was our world traveler. One of the things he brought along was his passport. So I pretended to stamp his passport for him because he's crossed another boundary now. I had to do a somersault too. And it really felt amazing. But the best part of the flight for me was the view. You look out those huge windows and you can see the curvature of the Earth, and you can see this thin blue band, that's the atmosphere that you're above. And then you look up from there, and instead of blue sky, it is the blackest black that you can imagine. And it's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my whole life. It's just amazing. Pictures, even this picture doesn't do it justice. You've seen videos, you've seen movies. It's not the same. It's gorgeous. So we had about 3 minutes of weightlessness, and then it was time to get back into our seats. Meanwhile, the booster is falling down, and it lights its engine to land, but we were getting all strapped down, and the capsule was coming down a little bit slower. Here's the booster, lit its engine and landed on the landing pad about 2 miles from the launch pad, and here's what it looked like after it had landed there.
wow.
Meanwhile, we were in the capsule, and after coming down into the atmosphere, 3 smaller drogue parachutes opened to make sure everything's nice and stable, and then 3 big blue parachutes come out to give us a very nice, smooth ride down to the desert floor there. Just beautiful. And some people that were watching the flight on video on the internet, they were really concerned because when they saw the capsule touch down, there was all this dust. Oh my goodness, it must have been such a hard hit. It wasn't. That's just regular West Texas dust. And they fire some thrusters right at the last second to make it even smoother touchdown for us. So here's the capsule, and you can see the ropes from the parachutes. They had drones come along and take pictures. That's me waving on the window to the drone. It took about 10 minutes for Sarah to get out there on the truck, and she opened the hatch for us. And then we got to come out and wave to our family and friends that were there. And my wife was there to greet me, which was wonderful, and an extra long hug because everything had gone safely and smoothly, and it was a fantastic experience. Sarah came over to ask, so how was it? It was awesome. Well, what was your favorite part? The view. And we took some pictures in front of the capsule there. And then very special ceremony, Audrey Powers, who is one of the vice presidents for Blue Origin, and who had flown on a previous flight of New Shepard, had a nice ceremony and gave us each our astronaut pins. So it's a little A with a feather going across for the crossbar on the pin. So very nice. Then we went back to the astronaut training center and got to see the rest of our families. It's wonderful, and tell them all about it. And then after lunch, we got to drive back to see our booster that had taken us to space and take some more pictures. And here's me with my family, and you'll see they all have on their Curious George t-shirts. We bought t-shirts with Curious George on them just for fun. And it didn't take the Blue Origin engineers very long. They immediately put the booster back on a trailer there and drove it back to the barn to start getting it ready for the next flight. And then we had a wonderful celebration dinner that evening, and we're trying to tell everybody what it was like, which was amazing. The next morning, then Blue Origin had a little debriefing for us. They invited the Blue Origin employees to meet with us, and we got to thank them for building such an amazing rocket and keeping us safe. And then they had a chance to ask us any questions that they wanted to and have their picture taken with us, which was fun. And after that, it was time to head back to the airport and fly home after what had been an amazing week. And I'm happy to take any questions that people have. So,
Well, first of all, George, wow and wow, what a fabulous presentation. Yeah, students, we can clap like this, like they do with with the people with no sight. So George, gosh, right away, I'm going to turn right to the students' questions because there's a ton of them. And I'll scroll to the top. Yeah, which is good. I love it. But I do want to ask, I'm going to take a little pride here and ask a really fun question. Did you ever have a moment that you thought, what am I doing? Am I crazy?
I did not. So
Okay.
flying in space is risky. There is risk there. It is not perfectly safe. But again, I've been working in the space business my whole career. And so I was aware of that. And I still wanted to go. And my family supported me. And it was amazing. And after the training especially, I had a lot of confidence in the engineers and the managers and the trainers. They really knew their stuff, and they prepared us very well for what to do in case something went wrong. So when it came to launch day, I felt very well prepared and ready to go.
All right, great. So we have the first question is, when did you become interested in becoming an astronaut? So Leah, why don't you show where you are so he can see who he's talking to? Leah, where are you? There you are. Okay. So Leah's right there, and go ahead.
Okay. So I became interested in space when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I would say. And again, would read articles and newspapers and books and everything about space, and just thought it would be amazing. I actually applied to be a NASA astronaut when the NASA was flying the space shuttle, and you didn't have to be a test pilot yourself and have perfect vision and everything. And I was invited down for a physical exam and interviews. So I made the finals, but I didn't make the last cut for that. So, but I still enjoyed working on the programs and all the things I had done at NASA, Air Force, FAA, and all that. So it was fun to meet these people and work on the program. But then after I retired, when I was 71 years old, that's when I got to fly to space. And oh my goodness, it was worth the wait.
That's a great question. And then some of them want to know what the feather means on the Blue Origin. Do you know?
So that's just the symbol they chose for their company. I think it's, birds fly, and it's pretty and it's delicate, but it reminds you of flying. And so I think that's why they chose it.
I love that. And Leah was wondering, what is your favorite thing about your work?
So after my space flight, a lot of people ask, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do? I've decided to do what I can to enable more and more people to have that experience to go to space. So we're going to need to make the rocket safer. It's going to have to be less expensive. And we're going to have more companies, more rockets, more spaceports. because it's just such an amazing experience. I want more people that want to be able to have that opportunity themselves. So that's what I'm trying to do.
That's great. I have to just interject for a second that when seeing all your pictures, I realized, I mean, they really did a good job of taking good care of you. I
They
mean,
did.
even the shuttle seats look super comfy,
Yes,
and I know that it costs a lot of money too. So you get, but I feel like you're getting your money's worth.
absolutely.
Before I used to think, oh,
Yeah.
how silly people spend that much money. But no, I think they made it worth your while. So,
They did
and
indeed.
Leah also was saying that she was glad that there were a woman on it, which is
Yes,
cool.
yes.
Yep. We got the feather question. And oh, yeah. So Delaney, wave Delaney so he can see where you are. Delaney actually is a huge science lady and has a YouTube channel with over 100,000 followers.
Wonderful.
So she's very serious about it. So Delaney, why don't you ask Dr. Neil the question?
What was your
You,
favorite part of your training?
Wow. So I think going through the practice simulations was really fun because you can imagine yourself actually going to space, but you knew it was safe and you were on the ground and you got to do it over and over again so you wouldn't forget things. But it was so realistic. It was just like the actual capsule, and even the sounds was just like the flight. So you got to relive that over and over again. We must have done that dozens of times until it was, okay, I know what's happening next. And that made it very exciting.
Did it really prepare you for your actual launch?
I would say yes. And so, as I mentioned, you're a little bit, it's like when you have to do a solo in band or a choir or a play or giving a speech, a little bit butterflies or anxious, but I wasn't scared. I felt well prepared and ready to go.
That's
and
super cool. Thank
yeah,
you.
isn't that cool? And Delaney, you also wanted to know about the pack that they brought up. Why is it only 3 pounds? Right?
Yeah.
That was one of your questions too.
So um, that rocket is able to carry 6 people that don't weigh too much, and each of us had our own little pack. But if it weighs too much, not only would the rocket not be able to take us to the Kármán line, but it might off balance things like in an airplane. You have limits on how heavy your suitcases can be and things like that. And so
Yeah.
that's what they told us, and that worked just fine.
Cool. Thank you.
So then there's some questions about how long, about school, how many years did it take for you to become an astronaut? And I think that's a little bit interesting question because he really did not go to school to become an astronaut, did you, George? It was to
That's
become an
exactly right.
engineer and to
So
be a
again, when I was growing up, it seemed like, well, the way I could be an astronaut maybe would be work for the Air Force or work for NASA. I need to have lots of math and science and extra degrees and be a pilot and things like that. And I did that because I liked doing that, but I didn't end up being selected by NASA. And so now, today, it is very different. You do not have to work for NASA in order to go to space. And so we're seeing young people, older people, engineers, yes, but also people who don't know math or science, other things. They just want to have that experience. And if you think about the future, all the things that people want to do in space, whether it's having space stations or bases on the moon or a scientific research station on Mars, you're going to need all kinds of people. Yes, engineers and scientists and test pilots and so forth, but also welders and electricians and cooks and authors and artists and communications experts and lawyers and all kinds of folks. So regardless of what you end up studying or doing, if you have an interest in space, there's a place for you in space. So just keep working on it and you'll be able to reach your dreams.
Thank you, George. And one of the things that I was saying on the earlier call with the author, Vicky Fang, was that she followed her passion. And I think if you follow your passion and you work hard at supporting it with education, you can do anything. And because like she was a musician, an actress, and she got her degree in math and science, but she blended all of that to become, she's written 23 books.
Wow.
And all bestsellers. And, so you just, like George, follow your passion. And those of you that went to the Splashdown celebration, you heard me tell the story of Buzz Aldrin as a child loving to collect rocks. That was his passion. I mean, it was like he was obsessed with it. And you know what his job was when he landed on the moon, the second man to step foot on the moon? His job was to bring back rocks from the moon. I mean, like, oh my gosh. So whatever you're passionate about at this age, right now, can be what you can contribute to the world as an adult. So don't give up on your dreams. So there was also, kids love the astronaut Legos. I thought that was kind of fun too. And then what training did you have to do? Well, we kind of covered that. I'm just making sure that we get, and the favorite part of your training at the Blue Origin, favorite part, what would you say? The simulations probably, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, well, I was going to say maybe you could talk to Blue Origin about having one of our reading challenge winners go up in the next shuttle.
Ooh, that would be great.
Yeah, how do you like that idea?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
So anyway, yeah, I'm all for that. Is there an age limit? Have they decided you have to be 18 or? Because I think there was a 17-year-old, wasn't there?
No, today, at least in the United States, the government recognizes that even though we're doing pretty well with the human space flights, but there have been accidents in the past with the Space Shuttle Challenger and Columbia and so forth. And so spaceflight does have some risk. And so the US government says today they want each person to be able to say, I understand that risk. And so you need to be an adult, 18 years old, to be able to sign those forms and say, I understand that this is risky, but I still want to do it. And it probably won't be that way forever, but for right now, that's where you are.
All right, 18 is not that far away for some of them.
That's true. And if you have not seen a launch, that is an awesome thing too. I mean, just to be able to see and hear and feel the rumble. Oh my goodness, it's a very emotional thing just to be able to see a rocket launch.
Yeah, Chantel can talk about that too. I know I've experienced them in Florida as well. So I like this. There was one that I just saw it. Hang on here. Hold on. We kind of covered some of this. What was it like in the spaceship without the gravity? I mean, it looked like a couple times you were still hanging on to, because it was like a little freaky or what?
So as I mentioned, you can't help but smile and laugh. It's just such an invigorating feeling because all of a sudden you've got 3 dimensions and there's lots of space. So yes, I was holding on, but that's just because if you were not holding on, you're stuck. You can't really swim. So you have to be able to, if you want to be upside down or get back to your seat or go over to the other side, then you need to make sure you have something to grab onto. But it's a very pleasant feeling. There was no, people always worry about being car sick or seasick or getting space sickness or something like that. Nobody on our crew had any problems with that at all.
Good. So there was a question about what do you think is the most important skill for future astronauts to have? Even though you've touched on that a little bit, maybe just kind of summarize.
So as I mentioned, I think we're going to need all kinds of skills in the future, but it's absolutely important that you be able to communicate well, both verbally and in writing, to be able to tell people either your ideas or your concerns or your recommendations on what to do and so forth. And so that's very important. And the other important thing is learning how to be a good team member because you're counting on one another when you're on that flight. It was just the 6 of us. There wasn't a flight attendant or a pilot or anybody who would say, hey, get back in your seat. So we all had to trust one another and count on us to do the right thing in case of emergency.
Oh, I love that. A couple of things about when you were up there. Could you see stars or did you see the moon or was it just black?
Great question. And frankly, I hadn't thought about this before the flight, but the answer was it was just black, but it was bright black. It's not like, oh, it's dark outside. And why was that? Because we flew during the daytime. So the sun was really bright, but it was black instead of blue. Now, if we had flown in the middle of the night, yes, you could have seen lots of stars. And you see lots of pictures of stars when you see video from the space station. Well, they're going around and around the Earth, so they have day, night, day, night, day, night, day, night. Our flight was very short, and it was during the daytime, so we couldn't see the stars because of the brightness of the sun.
That's interesting. And was the booster damaged at all? Or was it all in good shape?
No, it looked like it was in great shape, and it was ready to go again. Yes, they've used that boosters, 6 or 7 times each now. Yes.
That's great.
Pat,
So let's hear.
I think there was a question too. How long was the flight, George?
So here's a surprise. The whole flight was only 10 minutes long. But that seemed right. You got all of the pieces of the flight, getting pushed back in your seat, being weightless, looking out the window, hearing the sound, doing somersaults, all those kinds of things, coming down under the parachutes. And so it was the complete space flight, but it was only 10 minutes long because it was a suborbital flight. So that meant we just went up to 107 kilometers. So that's 66 miles high, or 351,000 feet, about 10 times higher than a normal airliner.
Wow.
And then we came right back down. The people that go to the space station, you have to be going a lot faster than that in order to go into orbit around the Earth. So that would require a bigger rocket. It would be more expensive, more complicated, and so forth. So this is just a suborbital flight, up and down.
So there's thank you, two really good, interesting back-to-back questions. I really love space and astrophysics. So what would you recommend to help me learn and enhance my interest and learn more? And then right after that, Maddie said, I want to be an astrophysicist and how do you say that? Cosmological? I've never even heard of that word. And an end goal of an astronaut or perhaps CEO of a space company. What skills do you think is most important for a future astronaut? So kind of they're looking ahead for your guidance, George.
Excellent. Great questions. There's no one right answer of here's the one thing and then I'll get to do what I want. And in fact, you may have your grand plan, and I encourage you to have plans and ideas for what you might want to do as you get older, but be open also to changing your plan. I never would have thought that I would end up working for the Air Force and then NASA and then the FAA, and I would go to space after I retired from the government. That's crazy. So again, be open to opportunities and follow your passion, your dreams, the things you are good at and that you enjoy doing. But then also be alert for what's going on in the news, in other countries, the government, and industry. And again, today, space is not just for NASA. If you want to work for NASA, that's wonderful, but that's not the only opportunity you'll have.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the food, Haley, and I was curious about that too. I mean, I had no idea that they actually even trained you before the flight. I thought you wrote a check, you got on the shuttle up and down. So I was fascinated to see all your photos, and then to see that you were there for how many days, and did you ever meet the chef, and did they take your dietary concerns? Kind of talk about that part of it.
So we were asked to arrive 5 days before launch, and that gave us basically 3 full days of training before the scheduled launch date. And the time in the astronaut village, yes, we got to know one another as a crew. We got to learn our trainers. They had basically people that they hired from Los Angeles to come out and cook our meals and take care of us. And, it was like staying in a fancy hotel, except it was an Airstream trailer instead of a high rise. And so, again, they really took good care of us. When my grandkids came out for the launch, they had some of the Blue Origin people that were taking care of them and allowed them to fly little model rockets in their spare time. And they got to sit in the simulator themselves and all. And so we just felt like it was a wonderful experience for the whole family. Now, our flight was short, as I mentioned, only 10 minutes, but of course they had to feed us during our training and so forth. A few people on some of these flights like to throw M&Ms at each other or something like that and see if they can swallow it and all. But we decided, let's not do that. Let's spend our time either having fun floating or looking out the window instead of just playing a game that you could do anytime. So.
Okay, so I'm so interested in all of this. I could just go on and on and on. So I didn't hear about the celebration in time. Oh, sorry. Okay, that was about last weekend. Sorry about that. No matter how dangerous. Okay, so we only have about 8 more minutes. So I'm going to look at many of these questions as I can, but I'm going to ask each of you if you have something that you absolutely need to know, some burning question, and you can open your mic and ask it directly to Dr. Nield. And so, well, let's go ahead and Chantel, why don't you start?
Me?
You.
It's amazing. So George, I have to first comment and thank you for all of your work, because your work is what has paved the way for my space company to allow to do what I do, which is very non-traditional space. So thank you. And after coming back from Van Horn, I must say you have done such an incredible job on this presentation, and the bringing awareness to everybody of your experience is just incredible. The first time I heard you speak, I was mesmerized, and thank you for being here today. It's just absolutely, and I hope that everyone on this Zoom has really, really anticipated what their future will be. You're going to be able to be the first author while you're flying in space. And George, what with some of those special items that you brought on board, what did you do with those when you got back?
So some are just keepsakes to help me remember things. I had the little Lego astronauts that I gave to our grandkids, and little family pictures that we put on as a Christmas ornament that we gave out to family and friends, and still got that Curious George book and so forth. But again, those will always just be special. The banners are in my basement that I can see every day when I work out. So just special things, and you could pick whatever you want as long as it fit in the 3-pound bag.
Pretty incredible.
Great. So raise your hand if you have that question ready. Okay, Haley?
So before you retired, what was a day at work like?
Can you say it again, honey? It was hard to hear you.
Before you retired, what was a day at work like?
Before I retired, what was a day at work like? So at the FAA, it was really interesting because it was our job to work with all of the companies that are launching rockets, not the government. So SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, all of those companies, before they're allowed to launch, they have to convince the FAA that even if something goes wrong with the rocket, you're not going to hurt any of the people on the ground. There won't be a rocket crashing into a school or Disney World or something like that. And so it was really interesting to meet all these people and see all the different rockets and spacecraft and satellites that they were all working on. And aerospace is a wonderful family type community. It's relatively small compared to many other businesses, but people really have a passion for space and trying to be part of that. So it made it very interesting.
George, tell them what FAA stands for.
Oh, I'm sorry, Federal Aviation Administration. So that's the same organization that keeps you safe when you fly airplanes.
Right.
Is also responsible for the safety of the commercial space flights in the United States.
Great. Maddie, and then Nithya, you be next. Maddie? Okay, and then Lila, you'll be third.
Okay, so what things can I start doing now if I want to be an astronaut later?
So there's not just one thing, but the more you know about different areas, the more that's going to better prepare you. And whether that's math and science or building things, being
engineering,
creative, being an artist, writing things, being able to tell a story, and then again, knowing what's going on, and whether you do that on the newspaper or on the web or social media, whatever it is, just sort of not just being in your world. You go to your school and you play and you come home and you go to sleep, but what's happening in the rest of the world. That's going to better prepare you to represent your community or your country or your agency or humanity as we go off to the stars.
Great. Nithya?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have like many interests that I want to like explore in, but like Maddie said, I also want to make a difference in like the space community, and I was wondering what should I do to like make sure I get like all my interests and like connect all of them. Thank you.
Continue to learn and study and understand what your opportunities are. So you might have a plan, but then you have a backup plan and a backup plan. And then, you know, when it comes time to either choosing a school to go to for college or choosing a job, you're going to want to understand, what is it going to be like to be there? Am I going to like the people? Am I going to like the kinds of things they think are important? Are they have the same values you do? And so that way you won't go in and start working and, you know, I really don't like what this company is doing or how they're doing it. Then you'll have to change where you are. But that's okay too. And you're not stuck in one place. You're not stuck in one job. You're not stuck in one opportunity. You have your whole lives ahead of you. And so take advantage of it.
Thank
I
you.
want to piggyback on that, if I may.
Please.
For all of you, I would recommend you keep a journal. Keep a journal of what excites you now. And as it changes, see how there starts to be a pattern.
Yeah.
And it happens when you write longhand. I'm not saying type it. I'm saying a real, like almost like a diary, like a notebook, you handwrite it. There's a connection between handwriting and the brain that is different than when you type. So my suggestion is you continue that. If you're not doing it now, start doing it now, and watch as you widen your education, as you widen your life experiences, those items will evolve, and you'll all of a sudden, maybe at the age of 40 or the age of 21 or 71, it all comes together. Okay.
Great suggestion.
All right. And now I promise Layla and then Delaney. And then if we have time, Haley, we'll circle back to you again. Okay, Lila? Leah, I'm sorry, honey. I'm saying your name wrong. Leah. No, you're actually, are you Byron? No.
Okay.
What's your question?
So, question.
Sorry, you're breaking up. We can't quite hear you, honey.
Oh. So, was
Sorry, we're losing your reception. So, Delaney, let's go back to you then.
Okay. Hi. So, my question was, overall, out of all the jobs you have described that you've had, what was your favorite and why?
I have change for you.
Sorry, we're trying to mute. I'm trying to figure out where that other voice is coming from.
So great question. And the interesting thing is I've had several different jobs and I've liked them all. I think working on the space shuttle was really exciting, and I got to meet people going to space, and I got to see a bunch of launches and so forth. But then when I was working for the FAA, that was also very interesting, again, because you felt like you were helping the whole industry get better at something, and that was really going to help. It's going to pay off in the future, having more companies and more people and more rockets and more things going on. And so all of those were great. But you know, in terms of an activity, nothing's going to beat actually going to space. So even though I wasn't really working, that was the best part.
Thank you so much, George. And so Haley, one last quick question, and then we're going to have everybody. I want you to think about what was the most important thing you learned today from Dr. Nield. Okay, so Haley, real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up.
How many years of school did it take, and like, did you have to go to multiple colleges?
How many years of something of colleges?
So again,
How many years of college did it take, and how many colleges did you have to go to?
okay, and so again, if you want to be a NASA astronaut, they will require you to have a college degree in science, engineering, and math, and that's all. But there's lots of people who have done that. So then they look at, well, have you done more than that? And what else have you done? What your experience? To fly with commercial companies, they don't say you need a degree. Now, what I did, I got my bachelor's degree in engineering at the Air Force Academy, and then later I got my master's degree in aeronautics and astronautics, which is airplanes in space. And then I went back and got my PhD, my doctorate degree from Stanford as well. And so altogether, that was 12 years up through high school, and then 4 years of college, and another year of master's, and 2 more years of PhD. But that's not a requirement. That's just what I had done. And there's going to be lots of opportunities, even if you haven't gone to college. If you've got a skill that is needed, that may be something that opens the doors for you.
Great. All right, real quick, I'm going to call on you, Leah. What was your best takeaway from today? You're muted. Can you unmute?
So, I think that the biggest thing that I learned was that no matter really what you want to do in life, there's always a chance that you could go to space with whatever job you have.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Nithya.
I learned that I should like open up my interests, and I should like learn more about each and every one of them.
Great. Haley.
I agree with Nithya.
Oh, good, good. And Delaney.
Okay, I learned that I should never give up on my dream, even if it's hard to achieve, and that the more I work for my dream, the better it's going to feel when I finally achieve it. So I think that my biggest takeaway was never give up and always believe in your dream.
Great. Okay, Maddie, and I think that should wrap it up.
Yeah, so I learned that it's never too early to start, and that just doing lots of different things, trying everything is awesome, and that like you can, if you just keep going, you'll like, even if you don't become an astronaut when you're 20 years old, then maybe you've got a chance later. And I also made some great friends.
Oh, nice. Great. Well, George, I'd love to turn it to you to give the last closing comment. Anything you'd like to send off these eager students back to their Saturday afternoon.
So thank you. This was a really fun talk for me, and I enjoyed hearing from all of you and seeing your interest in space, because space is the future, and there's a lot of exciting things that you're going to be able to participate in as you learn more, as you read more, as you figure out how you want to help, how you want to make a difference. So congratulations to all of you for being the reading bonus winners, and best wishes to you. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions later. I'm sure Pat can get up.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to give you feedback or advice if you have other questions in the future.
How
Thank you very
generous.
much.
That's very, very generous. So
Thank you.
on behalf of the S.T.E.A.M Race to Space Reading Challenge and all of these wonderful students, we thank you so much, Dr. Nield, and we hope that you have a blessed rest of the day and keep reaching for the stars.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.